Hey everyone, my name is Leanne and today I am bringing you a book haul. So you may have seen another book haul that I did recently where I was specifically talking about non-fiction books, and in that video I explained that last year I was acquiring so many books. I was getting books from so many different places, be that from work, as gifts from other publishers, and just also having absolutely no self-control when it came to buying books for myself. And I basically stopped doing book hauls last year because I couldn't really keep up. I wasn't, making content as much as I was previously, and I was just acquiring so many books that I wasn't keeping up with telling you guys about what was coming on the shelves. It is completely obscene how many books was coming onto my shelves, and to be honest, I'm still acquiring books at a really rapid rate, certainly compared to kind of my reading pace at the minute. So any kind of goal in terms of getting my to be read pile below a certain number in a certain time frame, that has just completely gone out the window. I'm not going to be catching you up on all of the books I have hauled since whenever I stopped doing book hauls last year, but I definitely want to tell you what has come onto my shelves this year, and I thought the simplest way of doing that was kind of splitting things up into different categories. So as I said, I already did a non-fiction book haul. There is a romance book haul that is coming. Today we're going to be looking at adult fiction that is on that kind of contemporary literary edge, and that is really a sweet spot for me in terms of my favorite books. I really like commercial fiction that has a slight literary edge to it, and there are elements of other genres in here as well. There's a bit of historical fiction, there's a thriller element to one of them, there are romance elements to some of them, but that's enough of a preamble. I'm going to tell you about the books now, and I'm going to actually kick things off with two books that I don't have because I have loaned them out, and they are After I Do and Forever Interrupted by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I read these books years ago, before there was all the hype around Taylor Jenkins Reid. Even the first time around, there has been two waves of hype. There's been the more recent TikTok wave of hype for Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and there was the booktube hype around that book a couple of years back. I was into Taylor Jenkins Reid's backlist even way before that. After I Do is about a married couple whose relationship is going through some difficulty, and they decide that what they are going to do is they're going to take a break from each other for a year. They're going to be able to do whatever they want, and the one rule is that they cannot contact each other for that entire year, and then they will come back together and see if their relationship is something that they want to return to. I loved this book when I read it, but I read it in the aftermath of a breakup, which was maybe not a good idea because it just totally convinced me that that was what was going to happen in my life, which would have been a terrible idea. But I loved that book so much that I went straight on and read a load of other Taylor Jenkins Reid books, including Forever Interrupted, which is about a couple who have this whirlwind romance. They get married super quickly. They don't know tons about each other yet, but they know they want to be together and they're in love. And one day, the man in this relationship, he goes out to the shop and he never comes back because he is hit by a bus or a truck, and his new wife is left obviously horrified and grieving, and then she also has to kind of make a connection with her late husband's mother, who had no idea that she existed. I think this author's backlist is quite different from some of her more recent books, but I would definitely still recommend reading them if you're a fan of this author. But I haven't actually read her most recent book, which is Carrie Soto Is Back, and I also picked up a copy of this. I won't talk about it too much because I'm sure most of you have already read this, and if you haven't, you've certainly heard of it. But this is about the phenomenally successful tennis player Carrie Soto, who broke a bunch of records when she was playing and has since retired. But now the kind of new hotshot tennis player has broken onto the scene and is about to break one of Carrie Soto's records. So she decides that she is going to come out of retirement. I love books about sports. I obviously love this author, so I'm really looking forward to reading this one. Very quickly, I'm going to talk about two other books that I've already read. So None of This Is Serious by Catherine Pacifica. This was our group read for the Irish Readathon, and this is kind of a book about a young woman who is just about to finish college or university and has a lot of uncertainty around her life. And it also very heavily deals with uncertainty in terms of how social media has affected our self-image and also how we communicate. I will leave my March wrap-up linked so you can hear my full thoughts on this one. And I would also like to point you in the direction of that video if you would like to hear my thoughts on Watermelon by Marian Keyes. This is the first book from Marian Keyes about the Walsh family, and we are following Claire Walsh, who on the day that she gives birth to her first child, her husband confesses that he has been having an affair and that he is leaving her, and Claire decides that she is going to go back to her family home, go back and live with mum and dad while she sort of figures her life out and figures out her new identity and all of these changes in her life, while also, you know, having a new baby. It's not just that her husband has left her. There are so many things that she's dealing with, including like her changing body image and that kind of thing. As I said, this is the first book that was about the Walsh family, and the most famous book in that sequence of books about the Walsh family. You can read these books independently, but I do kind of want to read them in order. The most famous of those books is Rachel's Holiday, which I do have a copy of on my shelves. But a recent addition to my shelves was again Rachel by Marian Keyes, and Anna very kindly gifted this one to me. I'll leave her channel linked down below. As I said, Rachel's Holiday is probably the most famous book about the Walsh family, and possibly Marian Keyes' most famous book, and there was so much anticipation on the release of this book. I'm not sure how many years after this book is set, or how many years was between the original release of Rachel's Holiday and this follow-up, but very much looking forward to reading this one. I will read Rachel's Holiday first, because I feel like it would be really silly not to, obviously. But I am so glad to have more Marian Keyes books on my shelves. I absolutely love her books. They are one of the few chunky books that I really look forward to reading, and I'm so glad she has this incredible backlist, because there is just so much more for me to enjoy. Anna also very kindly gave me a copy of Games and Rituals by Katherine Heine. So I hadn't heard of this book before, and Anna said that she didn't get it from my wish list or anything. She just kind of saw it and thought it looked like a Leanne book, and like, she's not wrong. This like pale millennial pink is definitely giving a Leanne book, and the kind of two toothbrushes together, I mean, it's a bit of a copycat of the Nisha Dolan book, but I do guess like that image of two toothbrushes being together, it's something that, you know, you can convey a lot of meaning from. As I said, I didn't know anything about this book, but I now know that it is a short story collection, and it explores love in all of its forms. So it's looking at kind of romantic relationships and friendships and like love affairs. So yeah, I can definitely see why Anna thought this was a Leanne book, and I'm very much looking forward to reading some short stories. A book I am so excited to read, and I am shocked that I've not picked it up yet, is The Secrets of Heartwood Hall by Katie Lumsden, who you may know as Books and Things on YouTube. Again, I will leave her channel linked down below so you can check it out. You're probably already subscribed to Katie's channel. Katie is a very, very dear friend, and she has recently published her debut novel, and I went to the launch for this book, and it was so much fun. It was so nice to see some old friends and also meet lots of new faces. This is a piece of gothic historical fiction. It is set in 1852, and it follows a widow who becomes a governess in Heartwood Hall, and as she settles into the position, things start to feel a little bit uneasy, a little bit creepy. There is tensions, there is whisperings and gossip, and there's also a little bit of romance with the gardener. Really excited to read this one. Thank you so much, Katie, for inviting me to the launch, and also for very kindly signing my copy. Not Safe for Work by Isabel Kaplan. I was so drawn into the cover of this book. I love like the really bright neon yellow and the really bright pink. They are colors that just really draw me into books. This is a book about being a young woman in the television industry and all of the different complications and pressures that come with that. Not only in terms of your workload and trying to get ahead, pulling all-nighters, doing whatever you possibly can to impress in this industry and climb the ranks. But this book also looks at the power dynamics between young women entering into this industry and the older men who are in positions of power. And it's a book about how even if you are someone who is like a staunch feminist, who is like really well educated on things like misogyny, on the patriarchy, even though you know all of those things rationally or academically, you can still find yourself justifying the really inappropriate, toxic, not okay behaviors of those men in positions of power. I think this is going to be a really important book, one that looks like at a lot of topics that I find really interesting, so very much looking forward to picking this one up and seeing how it approaches these difficult topics. I also picked up a copy of The Movement by Ayesha Malik. Now, I have read all of her previous books, her romance books about the character of Sophia Khan, who in a very simple way is kind of like a Muslim Bridget Jones. That's kind of the vibe of those books, and her novel This Green and Pleasant Land was one of my favourite books in the year that I read it. This one sounds quite different to both of those aspects of her writing that I've read previously. This is a book about the fact that we are living through a time where people's opinions are more accessible than they have ever been before, and people are vocalizing their opinions louder than they ever have before, whether that's literally in an outside space or voicing their opinions online. It all feels very shouty at the moment. People are shouting their opinions as loud as they possibly can. And our main character, Sarah, is sick of this, and she decides that she is now going to be silent. This sparks the silent movement. So I'm guessing this has like elements of activism to it, of protest, and of what it means to use your voice or deciding not to use your voice. As I said, I have loved previous books from this author, so I'm very intrigued to see how she handles this topic. Death of a Bookseller by Alice Slater. This was one of my most anticipated releases for 2023. I am so excited to finally have a copy of this book. It has been on my radar for ages. And this is definitely a book that has a genre element to it as well. It definitely has thriller elements to it. In this book, we are following two booksellers who from the outside seem quite different. So we have Roach, who is a bit of a loner. They love their true crime murder podcasts, their serial killer books. They have no interest in making friends. They're a bit of a loner. And then we have Laura, who is kind of your very obvious, like, cute bookish girl, like loves her tote bags, really sunny disposition. But Roach senses something in Laura. They sense a darkness in her. And Roach's initial curiosity about this darkness that Laura has spirals into obsession. I've seen lots of people reading this one already, even though it has come out very recently, and I've heard so many good things. I think this is going to be such a compulsive read. I also picked up a copy of You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty by Akwaeke Emeze. Now, I'm not sure if this is just like straight up romance or if it is quite literary. Our main character is offered this chance of a lifetime to go on this amazing holiday, to sit on the beach, enjoy the sun, lounge around and drink cocktails. And she feels like she's begun to heal. She's finally able to open up her life to the possibility of meeting someone romantically. But the trouble is, of course, she ends up catching feelings for someone who is entirely inappropriate. Which sounds like a straight up romance, so maybe this is a straight up romance, but I think because of what I've read from this author before, I am expecting a bit of a literary edge to it, and maybe that's because it's published by Faber as well. Like, Normal People by Sally Rooney is a straight up like commercial fiction novel, but because the package is put together by Faber, it looks way more literary than it is. And maybe that's the impression I'm getting with this one, but I have read this author's YA books, Pet and Bitter. And while I did enjoy those books, I was like, they didn't really feel like YA books. Like, they felt like books about teenagers, but for adults. Like, they felt very literary for that genre. And I really wanted to read something from this author that was just straight up a book for adults to read. So hopefully I will enjoy this one. Rootless by Crystal Zara Hapia. Again, not sure if this is just straightforward romance or if there are more kind of literary elements to it. But we are following the marriage between our two main characters who met in London in the 1990s when they were teenagers. Years later, they are married. It seems like they have the perfect love story, but they have conflicting feelings about having children. Sam definitely wants to have children, but Effie doesn't feel like she's ready yet. She wants to be free and focus on fulfilling her dreams. And when the couple face an unplanned pregnancy, it brings these issues to the forefront of their relationship, and it is about how they deal with that. I think it's a topic that we don't talk about enough in terms of, you know, you could have this perfect relationship, but if your feelings on these big life milestones, such as having children, don't align, that's such a difficult thing to go through. So I'm really intrigued to see how this author handles the topic. And this was another one of my most anticipated releases for the year as well. So really looking forward to reading it. I'm going to finish things up with some books from authors that I've read from before. So Lucky by Dawn O'Porter. I have read 3, maybe 4 of this author's previous books. I really enjoyed The Cows, which she published quite a few years ago now. So hopefully I will enjoy this one just as much. It is about 3 different women who outwardly it may seem that they have fantastic lives, but internally they are dealing with their personal struggles. They're dealing with things not being as perfect as they would like them to be. They are all women who you might say from an outsider's perspective, they are so lucky, but they have complications in their lives. And in fact, these women feel like failures. They really doubt themselves. As I said, I have enjoyed what I've read from this author previously, so hopefully I will like this one as well. And finally, I have Oryx and Craig by Margaret Atwood. I have had mixed feelings on the books that I've read from Margaret Atwood in the past. I think she's just written such a range of books that naturally there's going to be some that I really, really loved, like The Heart Goes Last, like The Handmaid's Tale, which is probably the book she's most famous for. But there have also been books from her like Alias Grace and her short story collection Stone Mattress. I recently read some of her poetry and I didn't get on with that as much. So it's a bit of a mixed bag for me when it comes to Margaret Atwood's writing. And if I'm going to be completely honest, I only really picked this one up because I love these editions of her books and it matches the edition I have of Alias Grace, and I would like to have all of her books. in this design. Because having just read the blurb of this book, it definitely sounds like it's on like the weirder, more surreal end of Margaret Atwood's writing, which I haven't got on with in the past. And to be honest, I've just read the blurb and I couldn't really tell you what the book is about. So we will see. This may be one that sits on my shelf for quite a while because I am a bit scared of it. So that is it. They are all the books I'm going to talk about today. Do leave me a comment down below and let me know if you have read any of these books, what you thought of them. Do you have any recommendations for me based off some of the books I've spoken about today? Although I definitely don't need to add more books to these shelves. If you want to let me know you are here but you don't have anything in particular to say, leave me a tennis emoji in honor of Carrie Soto's back. In my next book haul, I'm going to be talking about the romance fiction, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And if you want to see it, don't forget to subscribe if you aren't already. If you want to follow me on any of my socials, they're all linked in the description as well. That's it for me today. I hope you guys are doing well and I will speak to you in my next video.